The woman who fought back. What would you do if the man you destroyed in court kidnapped you on your wedding day and forced you to become his wife? What if everything you fought for, every argument you made, every word you spoke in that courtroom, was built on a lie? And what if the truth, when it finally arrived, was so heavy, so unexpected, that it shattered every judgment you had ever made about love, about justice, about yourself? Stay with me, because this story is not what it seems. Performing Arts Character Introduction. First 30 seconds. My name is Sophia. I am a lawyer. And I have always believed, with every bone in my body, that the law is the greatest equalizer this world has ever known. It does not bend for the powerful. It does not whisper. It speaks in truths. I grew up watching my mother fight battles that no one else dared to fight. I watched her lose sometimes. But I watched her stand, always, and that is what made me who I am. I was 28 when this story began. Sharp, stubborn, and absolutely convinced that I knew right from wrong. I had a fiancé waiting for me at the altar. I had a future mapped out like a clean legal brief, organized, logical, clear. I had no idea that in less than 48 hours, every single page of that plan would be set on fire. Scales hashed the courtroom, where it all began. The morning light cut through the tall courthouse windows like a blade. I remember the way the air smelled, cold, institutional, slightly electric, the way it always does before something important happens. He walked in wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Adam Knight. Even his name sounded like something carved into marble. He sat across from me with the kind of stillness that powerful men use as a weapon, the silence that says, "I am not afraid of you." "Adam, take the case back, Sophia. It will be better for you." I looked at him carefully. His jaw was set. His eyes were measuring me the way people measure things they plan to break. I took a slow breath. I straightened my back. And I looked directly into those cold, grey eyes. "Sophia, and what if I don't?" Something flickered across his face. It wasn't anger. It was something quieter than that, something almost like respect, buried under layers of arrogance. "Adam, my name is Adam Knight. You will lose this case. And if you try to accuse me falsely, I won't spare you." "Sophia, you're threatening me. In a courtroom. I can report this." He leaned back slightly, the ghost of a smile on his lips. "Adam, the law you trust so much doesn't scare me." My hands were perfectly still on the table. Inside, my heart was hammering. But I had learned long ago, never let them see the hammering. "Sophia, I will free Emma from you. I won't let her life be ruined. Not by you. Not by anyone." Cherry Blossom Emma, the girl I would have done anything for. Emma was my best friend in college. The kind of friend who remembers your birthday without Facebook, who saves you the window seat, who laughs loudly and without apology. She was soft where I was sharp, gentle where I was fierce. She came from a wealthy, traditional family, the kind that made decisions about your life before you were old enough to make them yourself. Since childhood, Emma had been promised to her cousin, Adam. A family arrangement. She never chose it. She never wanted it. And she never, not once in all the years I knew her, spoke his name without her face going carefully, deliberately blank. One semester, she simply stopped coming to class. Her seat stayed empty. Her phone rang and rang. When I finally called her house, it was Adam who answered. "Adam, Emma won't be studying anymore. She's getting married." The line went dead, and something cold settled into my chest, a weight that I would carry for years without knowing what to do with it. Telephone receiver, the call that changed everything. Years passed. Emma's seat in my memory stayed empty. I became a lawyer. I built cases. I won some. I lost some. I learned that the world is rarely as clean as we want it to be. And then, one evening, my phone rang. Her name on the screen. Emma. Her voice had changed. It was quieter, careful, like someone who had learned to speak very close to the ground, where no one could hear. We met in a small cafe, far from her neighborhood. She wore sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. She kept checking the door. She told me she wanted a divorce. She told me Adam was cruel, cold, that he blamed her for not giving him children, as if it was some personal failure, some betrayal of duty. And then she leaned close and whispered the thing that set everything in motion. Emma, the problem was never me, Sophia. He's the one who can't have children. But he would never admit it. He blamed me instead. He destroyed me, to protect his own pride. I looked at her, this woman who had once laughed so freely, who had once been made of light, and I believed her. Completely. Without question. How could I not? She was my Emma. She was the person I had known before the world had the chance to change her. I walked into that courtroom carrying her truth like a shield. I fought for her the way I always fought, with everything I had. And within days, shockingly fast, Adam Knight agreed to the divorce. Emma left the country. And I thought I had won. But some victories are not what they appear. And some truths have not yet arrived. Repeat button. Quick recap. Sophia fought. Emma escaped. Adam agreed without a fight. It all seemed perfect, too perfect. And on the morning of Sophia's own wedding, everything she thought she understood about justice, loyalty, and love was about to collapse. Bride with veil. The wedding morning, that never became a wedding. My wedding day. I remember the smell of the flowers. White roses and jasmine. My mother had arranged them herself, staying up until 2 in the morning, humming the same song she always hummed when she was nervous and trying not to show it. My dress was hanging by the window. The morning light caught the silk and turned it luminous. I remember thinking, this is what happy looks like. I had fought hard enough to earn this. I stepped outside to breathe the morning air. And then the world went black. When I woke, the ceiling above me was unfamiliar, high, ornate, the kind that belongs to old money and older secrets. The bed was silk. The room smelled of cedarwood and something vaguely expensive. My wedding clothes were gone. My phone was gone. The door, when I tried it, did not open. I was trapped. And then the door opened from the other side, and there he was. Adam, you interfered in my life. You stood in a courtroom and called me incomplete. You destroyed my marriage with words you didn't earn. Now you will live with the consequences. Sophia, you can't do this. This is kidnapping. This is illegal. I am a lawyer. I will make you pay for every single second of this. His expression did not change. Not a flicker. He looked at me the way you look at a problem you have already solved. Adam, you will marry me, Sophia. Lock imprisoned, but not in the way she expected. I want you to understand something. I fought. I screamed. I bargained. I threatened. I went through every legal argument in my head, every possible exit strategy, every scenario. There was no exit. Security was everywhere. The mansion was surrounded by walls I could not scale and guards who were paid to be invisible and immovable. My family did not know where I was. My fiancé must have been standing at that altar, waiting. The marriage happened. Not because I wanted it, but because I had no weapon sharp enough to stop it. I hated him. Quietly. Completely. The way you hate something that has taken everything from you without asking. But then something strange happened. He never raised his voice at me. He never raised his hand. He gave me books, because somehow he knew I would go mad without them. He had coffee waiting outside my door every morning. Black, no sugar, which is exactly how I take it, and I never told him. He was cruel in the way he had taken my freedom. But inside those walls, he was never cruel to me. I did not know what to do with that. Broken heart the moment everything shifted. 2 months passed. 63 days, if I counted, and I did count every single one. And then one morning I woke up and knew, before the test, before any confirmation, that something had changed inside me. I was pregnant. I sat in the bathroom with that knowledge for a very long time, just breathing, just existing inside a reality I hadn't chosen and couldn't undo. When Adam came in that evening, I told him. My voice was flat. I was too far past shock for any other tone. He went completely still. And then something passed across his face that I hadn't seen there before. Something unguarded. Almost broken. Adam, you stood in that courtroom and told the world I was incomplete. You said I could not be a father. You took my dignity and used it as a weapon. His voice was quiet. Not angry. Something worse than angry. Exhausted. Adam, and now you carry my child. He turned away. His shoulders were rigid, controlled. But I saw, just for a moment, the way his hand pressed flat against the wall. Like he needed something solid to hold on to. Open-lock the truth that broke the whole story open. It came slowly. Not all at once. The way truths rarely come all at once when they are the kind that will cost you something. Adam began to talk. Not in the way powerful men usually talk. Not to dominate, not to perform. He talked the way people talk when they are tired of carrying something alone. Emma had been in love with someone else. Since before the marriage. A man her family would never accept. Wrong background, wrong connections, wrong everything on paper. She had married Adam because she had no choice. But her heart had never arrived. She had taken medication, secretly, deliberately, to prevent pregnancy. Not because she couldn't conceive, but because she didn't want to be anchored to a life she was already planning to escape. And when she finally did escape, she used me to do it. She gave me the weapon and pointed me at the man she wanted to leave behind. Everything she had told me was a story, carefully constructed, perfectly designed. Adam, she told me once, near the end, that she had never loved me, that she had never even tried. She said it like it was something I should have known, like the not trying was obvious. He paused. And when he looked at me, his eyes were not the eyes of the man from the courtroom. They were the eyes of someone who had spent years trying to understand a wound that never made sense. Adam, I was furious. I blamed everyone, her, myself. And when you stood up in court and announced to the world that I was incapable of fathering a child, I think I wanted someone to be as wrong about me as she had been. I chose badly. I know that. I sat with that for a long time. I, Sophia, the lawyer, the woman who believed in evidence, in proof, in the careful weighing of facts, had built an entire case on one woman's unchallenged testimony. I had never questioned her, never looked for the other side. I had walked in assuming I already knew the truth. And I had been wrong. The question is no longer who was right. The question is, what do you do when the truth arrives too late to change what you've already done? What love looks like after the storm. Repeat button where we left off. Sophia is pregnant. Adam has revealed the truth. Emma was not who Sophia believed her to be. And now, inside a mansion she never chose, inside a marriage she never wanted, Sophia must decide what she is going to do with a life she doesn't recognize. Sunrise, the slow architecture of trust. I want to tell you that I forgave him immediately. That the truth washed over me like water and I stood clean on the other side, ready to begin. But that is not what happened. What happened was slower, quieter. The kind of change that you don't notice until one day you realize something inside you has rearranged itself and you don't quite remember when. Adam never begged. He never performed remorse. He simply began, slowly, deliberately, to show me who he was when he was not afraid and not angry and not armored. He asked me questions. Real ones. Not to be polite, but because he wanted the answers. He asked about my mother, about the cases I had loved most, about what I had wanted to be before I decided to become a lawyer. He listened. That was the thing. He actually listened. One evening, I found a stack of legal journals on my desk, new ones, the kind I hadn't been able to access since I'd been brought here. No note. No explanation. Just the journals. I sat with one of them for 3 hours. And for the first time in months, I felt like myself. Baby the child who changed everything. My son arrived on a Tuesday in early spring. He was small and furious and absolutely perfect, and the moment I held him, something in me that had been locked for a very long time opened quietly and without announcement. Adam held him for the first time with the kind of careful, terrified reverence of a man who has spent years believing he would never have this. His hands were enormous around that tiny body. He didn't speak. He just stood there, holding him, and breathed. I watched him become a father. And I understood, in that moment, what it costs a person to be told, publicly, professionally, by someone they could not argue back against, that they are incapable of being exactly this. I had taken something from him that I could not give back. The word sorry felt embarrassingly small. But I said it anyway. Sophia, I was wrong about you. I fought so hard because I believed I was fighting for someone who needed me. But I never checked if the story I was fighting for was true. I'm sorry, Adam. I am deeply, genuinely sorry. He was quiet for a long moment. The baby was asleep between us. Adam, you loved your friend. You trusted her. That isn't something to be ashamed of. Sophia, I was a lawyer. It was exactly something I should have checked. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and the ghost of a real smile crossed his face. The first one I had ever seen that wasn't cold or calculated. Adam, then we were both taught something we didn't expect. House the life that grew from the wreckage. He let me visit my parents. Without conditions. Without guards. He handed me a phone one afternoon and said simply, "Call whoever you need to call." My mother cried when she heard my voice. I cried too, in the hallway, with my back against the wall, holding the phone with both hands like it was something I might drop. Slowly, over months, the mansion stopped feeling like a prison. The walls stayed the same. But the air inside them changed. He gave me a study. A proper one, with shelves and a desk and a window that faced the garden. He had it set up while I was sleeping, filled with my books. I don't know how he found out which ones were mine. I never asked. Some things, I decided, I was allowed to simply receive. I started practicing law again, from home at first. Then, eventually, outside. He never interfered. He never told me which cases to take or which battles to choose. He was, in the end, a complicated man. Not a good man in every sense of the word. What he had done to me was wrong, and I never pretended otherwise. But he was a man with a real interior. A man whose roughest edges had been formed by losses I hadn't known existed. And he loved our son with a completeness that was almost difficult to look at directly. Speech ballooned the conversation that made it real. One night, when our son was about 8 months old, Adam and I sat on the terrace long after midnight. The garden was dark and quiet. He poured tea without asking whether I wanted any, because by then he already knew I always did. Adam, do you regret it? Any of it? I thought about it honestly. The way you think about questions that deserve a real answer. Sophia, I regret that I didn't ask harder questions. I regret that I let love for a friend become blindness. I regret the things I said about you in that courtroom, because they were wrong, and I said them with such certainty. I looked at him. Sophia, but I don't regret him. I meant our son. He knew that. But we both sat there for a moment in the silence that follows honest words, and neither of us filled it. He reached across and set his hand over mine. Not romantically. Not dramatically. Just the way people touch when they have been through something too large for words. Adam, neither do I. Herb, what I carry now. I learned that love is not always clean. It does not always arrive in the right form, through the right door, on a day when you are prepared for it. I learned that people we love, people we would die for, are still capable of using us. Not because they are entirely bad, but because they are afraid, and afraid people do desperate things. I learned that the man the world told me was a villain was carrying a grief I never took the time to see. And I learned, perhaps most importantly, that I, Sophia, who built her life on the precision of truth, had once built an entire case on nothing but assumption and devotion. We are all capable of being wrong about the people we are most certain about. That is not a comfortable lesson. But it is a true one. There is a version of this story where I stay furious. Where I hold on to what was done to me, and I let it define everything that comes after. Where I see Adam only as the man who took my freedom, and Emma only as the friend who betrayed me. I chose a different version. Not because what happened was acceptable. Not because pain disappears when you understand it. But because my son deserves a mother who knows how to let something evolve into something real. And because, when I am honest with myself, in the deep quiet of nights like this, I think the man across the terrace deserves more than the verdict I handed him in a courtroom without ever asking for his side of the story. Not every strong man is cruel. Not every broken story has a villain. And sometimes, the truth is something that arrives slowly, in pieces, and asks you to be brave enough to hold it. Life lesson from this story. Before we go, here is what this story leaves us with. 1. Never judge a person's whole story from one chapter. 2. Even the people we love most can deceive us, not always out of malice, but out of their own fear. 3. The loudest version of a story is not always the truest one. Ask harder questions. 4. A strong exterior does not mean an absence of pain. Some wounds are invisible. 5. Being wrong is not the end. What matters is whether you have the courage to see the truth when it finally arrives, and the grace to say so. Real love does not always arrive gift-wrapped. Sometimes it arrives through storms, through misunderstandings, through the very moments we are most certain we are right, and most deeply, quietly wrong. A message from our channel. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, think something, question something, then you are exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Speech balloon, drop a comment below. Whose side were you on at the start? And did it change? Thumbs up sign like this video if Sophia's courage gave you something to hold on to. Bell, subscribe and hit the bell, because every week, we bring you stories that don't just entertain. They stay with you. Outbox Stray, share this with someone who needs to be reminded. Not every story has only one side. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, always look for the whole truth. It is always worth finding. Red Heart, end of story. Red Heart.